Hey guys, what's going on? In today's video, we're doing a basic tuning guide. This is going to be a start to a new series. Ooh, that's a really nice photo shot, actually. We're starting a new series. It's going to be like a introduction to tuning, and this video is basically just going to be an introduction to tuning. And as the series goes on, I'll be tuning for different reasons, so drift, drag, grip, etc. But this is just going to be a basic tuning guide going over what you need to know really, and how to fix any problems with your tunes, and how to tune yourself instead of getting a random one. I'm here in my 550 horsepower WRX STI hatchback. This car is on a standard tune, I think. It just has too much power to keep up with the tune, so you got to adjust it here and there. And I'm doing an all-wheel drive car rather than a rear-wheel drive or a front-wheel drive car, because all-wheel drive is where a lot more people struggle, because like you can understeer and oversteer near enough at the same time. It's a bit weird, but let's just jump straight into how to tune these things. Obviously, you got your tyre pressures here. This is more pressure or less pressure, depending on what you're wanting. Your gearing, that can get a bit complicated sometimes, but it's basically how well your car accelerates and if it's based on top speed or acceleration. For your alignment, that obviously changes your camber, your toe and your caster. Your toe is where your wheel's poking in and out. I'll put a picture on screen to describe it a bit better. Your camber is if the top of the wheel is poking into the arch or if it's poking away. Negative camber is poking in, positive camber is poking out. A lot of stance cars will have a lot of negative camber. Your anti-roll bars kind of dedicate the stiffness, which I do need to put on this. The springs, this can deal with your handling a lot more. It basically distributes the weight. And then your ride height obviously dictates your ride height. The center of gravity, what you really want to be sure of. Because a higher car, obviously, it'll roll over easier because it's got a higher center of gravity. Your rebound stiffness and your bump stiffness is basically when you hit stuff, if you're going to bounce or if it's just going to absorb it. Your downforce with your aero, it's pretty basic. Your brakes, obviously, it's how much your brake pressure is, and where what your brake bias is front to rear. And your diff is obviously your differential settings, if it's locked, if it's unlocked, if it's limited slip. So guys, we're back over here at Arthur's Seat, which is a good place for testing tunes because there's variation of straights, corners and whatnot. So it's actually taking that corner pretty flat, which isn't too bad. Okay, it started getting a bit twitchy there. Like, the oversteeriness is what you want to look out for. Understeer isn't a major problem in this car, but with a lot of all-wheel drive, oh dear. There's a lot of traffic here. But you'll see on the tighter corners, like we're coming up to one now. On the tighter corners is where you'll really find out about the car, whether it does need some adjustments to the tune. And I can already tell with this that it needs stiffening up a bit, because it just feels really out of balance. It took that corner quite well. We had a little bit of understeer on the way out though. Okay, now I've added these roll bars, I'm not actually getting much over, as I say that, the car starts to oversteer. Of course it does. If you don't know what oversteer and understeer are, I'd recommend searching it. It's basically drifting or turning and not actually turning. And it's the easiest way I can really describe it. As soon as you push this car past its limit, it'll start skipping a bit on the rear. Or at lower speeds, it'll start skipping a bit. So I'm going to lower the tyre pressure a little bit just to get a bit more grip on the rear. The front I'm going to leave at 30 psi. The gearing is pretty spot on with this car already. I will do an advanced video for, you know, specific gear ratios and stuff like that. The alignment, we might want to take a little bit of camber off. I didn't know there were any camber on this, but that might be why we're oversteering. More negative camber on the rear basically means that, well, the more negative camber you have, the less grip, because the less contact patch you've got on the tyre to the road. The anti-roll bars, we're going to soften them a little bit on the rear. If you soften them a little bit on the rear, you'll have less oversteer, but you might get a bit more understeer. So a good way to do it is just, I normally lower it back to the point. See, the 2 points, the grey one is where it was at, and the white one is where it's at now. I try and make them meet, and then use it from there. And for the front, we're just going to make it a little bit stiffer, so it's a bit more direct. For the springs, we're going to stiffen the front and the rear just a tiny bit. And for the brakes, I'd recommend, if you use your car a lot, for racing or circuit racing, depending what you're doing with it. I'd raise your braking pressure between 120 to 140. It all depends on how much you want it, how responsive you want the brakes, basically. Stiffening the springs up might be the reason why I might get oversteer on this run. But so far, it feels really responsive and really grippy. It does feel like it's trying to, yeah, it's definitely trying to skip out a little bit on me. Yeah, you can see there I got a bit more understeer. We definitely need to change them sway bars. Yeah, I've basically, what I've done there is messed the tune up a little bit more. Before it was going through not quite level, and now it seems to be getting a bit too much grip on the rear. We're gonna higher the tire pressure on the rear to 28 instead of 27. The anti-roll bars, we're going to make it a little bit stiffer. And as for the dampening, I'm going to lower it by about 0.5 on each one. And the brakes, I'm going to leave the same. And the diff, you don't really need to mess with the diff. Right, so I'm going to adjust the tune for one last run. And this run is basically going to be, hopefully, the golden run for us. I'm just going to adjust the anti-roll bars and adjust the springs a little bit more, just so I can get it right, because it did feel a little bit oversteery. The springs, I'm going to go with a little bit lower on the front as well. And the dampening, I'm going to leave that as is. It really doesn't help that I'm doing this in winter, and I wouldn't recommend tuning your cars in winter, just for the simple fact of the snow. But it does, this car automatically feels a lot more sturdy. Like before I was like swinging about here like no tomorrow, as if it was a drift car, and now it's just, you can see it's just gripping, and I'm throwing it in quite tight narrow spaces too. Yeah, this feels a hell of a lot sturdier. It feels a little bit slower, but that little bit of speed we've lost could be the difference between like a fast lap. It could make up a second in a lap, or it could make up 2 seconds in a lap. We're still getting a little bit of sliding, but it's not like a full-on drift. It's just a bit of that weird understeer oversteer thing what you get with an all-wheel drive car. Kind of hard to eliminate, but you can see from that corner we still got air, but it still gripped on the way around. Right, let's see if it'll still skip out on this corner. And it didn't skip out. I'm actually really impressed with how this has came out. And normally, for just like a 10-minute tune, I wouldn't expect to have a car dialed in like that. But if you guys have enjoyed this video and want more episodes in the series, like, comment, subscribe down below as you always do. And I'll see you guys in the next bloody video.